Okay, so this is a continuation of the previous video I made. And in this video, I'm going to address why spree shooters commit mass murder. So there's a lot of bad information out there as to the motivations of why these people do what they do. And people have been speculating on motivations ever since Columbine, and they consistently get everything wrong. And oftentimes, the people who are getting these things wrong are supposed to be experts and have PhDs and things like that, but yet they all get it wrong. So I'm going to set the record straight and actually explain why these people do what they do. Um, so I'm going to be focusing specifically on spree shooters who are incels. I'm going to be defining incel a little bit differently than how you may have heard it defined in other places. In other places, they define incels as um, basically misogynistic people who hate women. Um, and I'm I'm not going to address that specifically because I think that's better characterized as misogyny rather than what incel actually is, which the word itself is a portmanteau of involuntary celibacy. So I'm simply going to define an incel as someone who wants to have sexual and romantic relationships with women, but isn't. Okay, so very simple kind of definition. And I also need to preface this entire conversation with um, most incels do not kill anyone. Most incels do not hurt anyone. Um, now, and most incels are not otherwise bad people, okay, in the way that I defined it. Now, if you define it the way that you may have heard it in these other places, which is very much a sexist, misogynistic ideology, then yeah, I mean, they absolutely are bad people. But um, in the strictest sense of someone who just wants to have sexual or romantic relationships with women, but isn't, that doesn't necessarily apply to them. In fact, it doesn't apply to most of them. Um, However, when an incel is murderous, I'm going to explore their motivations. Now, spree shooters includes a lot of different people. All right, so because of that, the people who are committing mass murder by taking guns and shooting tons and tons of people, not all of them are going to fit the same kind of pathology. It's going to include people who are motivated by other things. But you can kind of compartmentalize these things and put them into different groups so that we can at least understand things a little bit better. Terrorists are people who are politically motivated and they commit violence um, that is motivated by certain political goals. The terrorists themselves may not necessarily be political, but whoever is instructing them, handling them is. So terrorists are not the same thing as incels. Their motivations are extremely different. And because their motivations are extremely different, their methods can also be very different as well. So let's take a look at a video to help illustrate my point, shall we? Let's take a look here. This is Ice-T. So he's talking about guns in this video. So let's listen to what Ice-T has to say.
Not routinely at home. I mean, you have a gun at home?
Yeah, it's legal in the United States. It's part of our Constitution. You know, the right to bear arms is because that's the last form of defense against tyranny. Not to hunt. It's to protect yourself from the police.
And do you see any link between that and these sorts of incidents?
No. Nah, not really. You know what I'm saying? If somebody wants to kill people, you know, they don't need a gun to do it.
Makes it easier though, doesn't it?
Not really. You can strap explosives on your body. They do that all the time.
Okay, so there's some stuff that he's saying that I actually agree with. Um, however, so he's saying that you can just blow people up. And for terrorists, this is true. People who are committing violence um, and are politically motivated, yeah, they will use explosives, they'll use vehicles to ram people to kill as many people as possible. But incels typically don't do this. Okay. Um, they typically use guns. The reason why they typically do not use other methods like explosives is because, unlike terrorists, murderous incels are suicidal. They do not value their life. Now, it's not to say that the terrorists are having a great time. Oftentimes, terrorists are very poor. They don't exactly have the greatest lives, but they are not suicidal per se. Okay. And because of this, they actually do value their life, but they are willing to sacrifice their life to accomplish a greater political objective. Incels do not. There's also another difference in that incels are, since they are also suicidal, but they are also afraid. And one of the things they are afraid of the most is pain. And I'll delve into this a little bit more later. Um, they're also cowards. And the one thing that they don't want to do is they don't want to have a painful death. And they are too scared to fight anyone who can fight back. Terrorists, I'm not going to say these people are great, but they are typically aren't as cowardly in the same sense as I'm talking about, and afraid of pain in the same sense. Um, so to help illustrate that point a little bit more, let me see what we got here. I got some stuff just kind of strewn about here. Okay, so here's this is just like a screenshot from a very good movie called Hotel Mumbai, and this movie covers um, a series of spree shootings that happened in India, the Mumbai shooting attacks. It was a terrorist attack um, where a terrorist organization um, that was state sponsored by Pakistan committed mass shootings in India, Mumbai. And if you watch this movie, you'll see a big difference between how these guys are killing everyone and how spree shootings happen in America. In that these guys were fighting to the last breath. They were shooting and killing, and when they were confronted by police and um, uh, paratroopers engaging them in firefights, they did not do what spree shooters in America do usually, which is usually spree shooters in America just kill themselves. Okay, these guys actually engaged them and tried to kill them too, and were fighting until they were dead. The reason why incels commit suicide before the police even have a chance to engage them is because they are afraid of dying painfully, and they are too cowardly to fight against anyone who can fight back. Okay, and that is a huge, huge difference. So, because of that, the tactics that incels will use to commit mass murder must also facilitate a swift and painless death for themselves. And the most reliable way to do this is with a gunshot to their own head. That's the reason why they typically don't want to use explosives to commit mass murder, because they're suicidal. They want to die, but they want to die painlessly. And while you could say, hey, blowing yourself up is going to be quick and painless, maybe not so much. you know, there's other reasons too. Making a bomb is a lot more difficult than just buying guns, which are readily available. So availability of guns is a factor. It's just not the only factor. Um, and this runs the gamut for other things. Using a vehicle to ram lots of people and kill people in this way. What are you going to do there? Try to run yourself over? Good luck with that. That sounds unbelievably hard and extremely painful. The opposite of swift and painless. So that's the reason why they don't usually use these other methods of mass murder. Using guns facilitates killing lots of people and also killing themselves painlessly. All right. So those are some of the major differences between the two. So let's bring up another set of bullet points here. Let me see if this is going to come up. There we go. Okay. Trying to remember kind of the course of all the things I wanted to discuss here. Let me just make sure that I got everything organized. Okay, I think I'm ready to talk about this point. Okay, so some of the things that you have heard before, especially around the Columbine times, is that they always look for whether or not bullying was a motivating factor. Was the gunman bullied? And sometimes that's true, but the thing is that bullying itself does not actually create spree shootings. And the reason for why this is obviously not the case is that these spree shootings are killing lots of people, and usually these people that they're killing are strangers. Okay, if the incel was targeting a bully, rather, let me rephrase that. If the incel was motivated by being bullied, they would target the bully or bullies who were bullying them. I mean, that makes sense. Um, Now, like all things in life, there are some exceptions. So let me bring this up here. Okay. Let's bring this up. All right, so this guy here, this is David Katz. You may remember this guy. So this is the guy who did a spree shooting during a gaming event. So this guy was a pro gamer, playing some sports game. I forget, some football game, I think. And it was being live streamed. So people were watching this live stream happening on, I think, YouTube and Twitch and stuff like that. And then he lost a match and then went back to his car, I guess, took out some guns and then started shooting and killing people. He killed 2 people and injured, I think, 11 other people. Unfortunately, a lot of information to describe what actually motivated this guy to do what he did is not very good. If you were to go to the Wikipedia page, uh, it's honestly kind of terrible because it does not explain why he did it. And the reason why he did it was because this guy bullied him. Now, I kind of understand why they don't want to say this, because this was one of the victims. This was one of the people who was actually killed in the shooting. But this guy actually bullied David Katz. No joke. It is a horrible kind of thing to happen like this. But this guy was David Katz's first target. Okay. And then he killed at least one other person, and then he shot a whole bunch of other people. Whether the second guy was intended as an intended target as well, I'm not really sure. But the rest almost certainly were just targets of opportunity. So then it begs the question, if one specific person was likely the reason for why he did what he did, committing mass murder, why kill the others? Why try to kill others? So that's something that I will get into in a second. It's very difficult to organize all my thoughts here, but I'm building up to something here. Okay. So I have here, while incel spree shooters might have been bullied, bullying isn't usually what primarily motivates them. Rather, it's an aggravating factor that builds a pathology. So I gave an example of where there was an instance where someone was specifically being targeted because this was a bully. But yeah, incels who kill people, they may have been bullied, but usually this is historical. Like they were bullied in the past when they were little kids. Um, so it's not something that has happened recently, okay? But rather it can build a pathology in a person where it is something that is causing, for example, depression and overall dissatisfaction with their own life. Okay. So, next point. Incel spree shooters are not the same as serial killers. Okay. Now, I'm going to show you another video, which honestly is one of the dumbest videos I've ever seen. Now, the context to this video is these you probably heard about this. These kids in Idaho, they were college kids, and they were staying in, I believe it was just a house, some kind of I don't know if it was a sorority house or something, but these college kids were staying in this house and they were murdered. They were stabbed to death. And this was before they actually caught the guy who did this. And during this time when everyone was talking about this, there was a lot of speculation. There was a lot of bad speculation on who the culprit could be. So let's listen to Mr. MD, PhD, whoever the hell this guy is. I have no idea. He's supposed to be some expert, but if he's an expert, holy shit, he should find a new job because he's a moron. Okay, let's listen to what he has to say. He's going to say what he believes the kind of person the culprit is and why.
The biggest factor here that takes up a lot of attention as far as the potential for this to be involving an incel would be the 3 female victims themselves. Right. They meet sort of a visual presentation of what angers many incels.
Yes.
All right. So if you didn't catch that, if you didn't really understand what the hell he's talking about, I will translate to you what he was saying. He was saying that he believes that the perpetrator was an incel because the victims looked like sluts. These girls. That's what he's saying. Okay, when I first heard this, I was mortified and offended. I couldn't believe someone who's supposed to be an expert would say something so unbelievably stupid. You want me to say it again? He believed that the perpetrator who stabbed these girls to death was an incel because these girls looked like sluts. All right. Now I'm going to explain to you why that prediction turned out to be completely wrong. Okay, and it's so obvious. Mr. Expert, who has MDs, PhDs, I don't know what the hell he has. Maybe he got his degree from Clown College. Okay, but I'll tell you what he couldn't figure out for himself. The main difference between this tragedy, where a couple of college kids were murdered, and spree shootings, is that the perpetrator tried to get away. That is the biggest difference, and it makes all the difference. Incel murderers do not try to conceal their crimes. They make no effort to conceal their crimes. They commit them openly, and they are suicidal, and they usually die with their victims. This guy didn't. He committed his murders furtively, and he tried to get away with it. That is because the perpetrator obviously couldn't have been suicidal. And if they are not suicidal, that means they still value life. Incel murderers don't. They don't value their own life. Okay, and that's the biggest difference. So serial killers are very, very different than spree shooters. Serial killers are psychopaths. A psychopath is someone who has a diminished or non-existent sense of empathy. Okay, and empathy simply means you can feel something for someone else. You can put yourself in their shoes and feel what they might feel if you did something bad to them. You wouldn't want to do that to them because you understand how you would feel if you were in their situation, right? So empathy is a very, very powerful emotion, and it's a very important emotion to have. And when people don't possess it, it can lead to extremely aberrant and violent behavior. Not necessarily, though, but it can. Now, there are other qualities of a psychopath. Is that there's a few other things too. One of the other traits is that they have a diminished sense of fear. So spree shooter incels are not like this at all. Okay, they do have empathy. They absolutely do have empathy. And they also have a sense of fear. In fact, they are, as I pointed out earlier, they're very fearful. That's the reason for why they choose certain tactics in how they commit their crimes compared to psychopaths. Okay, so psychopaths diminished or non-existent sense of empathy and a diminished sense of fear. They're not afraid to kill. Okay, killing is a scary thing. It's very scary. That's a big reason for why most people don't go around killing people. Okay, and in fact, that's a big reason for why incels, are largely reluctant to commit murder, even if they are thinking about it. And sure enough, when they did find the murderer, it turned out to be a psychopath, not an incel. Okay, if you saw the guy, one of the most distinguishing traits, physical traits of a psychopath is their eyes. Their eyes are always very, very wide. It's very peculiar. And this guy was wide-eyed, very, very strange, bizarre-looking dude. He was a psychopath, not an incel. All right. Let's see. Let's get back to thing here. Okay. Okay, so I discussed about valuing life. So incels' higher order needs are unfulfilled. So what does that mean? Let's take a look at something that some of you guys may have seen before. Okay, so now I'm finally going to address why incels who are murderous commit murder in the first place. So this is Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And at the bottom, you have physiological needs. You need food, water, oxygen, all these things to maintain human health. You have something above it called safety needs. So you need to be protected, right? You can't live if someone's trying to kill you, right? So you need to be protected. These are all the needs that human beings need in order to live. But then you have these higher order needs, right? Belonging and love needs. I would say the need for um, sex and romance, right? And then you have some higher order needs here, which I'll talk about a little bit later. But when it comes to these bottom two needs, physiological needs and safety needs, believe it or not, human beings or intelligent creatures in general are not all that dissimilar from dumber creatures, dumber animals, in how these needs are fulfilled and how they react to them. The needs for these things are highly reactive and instinctual. Okay, you don't really intellectualize needing food and water and oxygen, things like that. And when these things are deprived, the response to fulfill them is not contemplated. It is reactive. Okay, that means you aren't thinking about, if you're drowning in the ocean, for example, you're not really thinking about about the situation on an intellectual level. You are largely reacting on instinct. Your body is kind of going into autopilot in order to save itself. You're not really thinking too much there. And that kind of behavior and process isn't all that dissimilar from other stupid animals on this planet. They all kind of share that kind of behavior in common. Where things become different is when you progress up this ladder a little bit more. That's when things become more complex. So, one of the biggest differences between human beings and smart creatures in general and dumb animals is that, unlike dumb animals, smart creatures can think and contemplate the meaning, the purpose, and value of their own lives. And if they no longer feel that their life is valuable, suicidal tendencies and aberrant behavior is likely to result. So, the problem with these kind of higher order needs is that they can be intellectualized in a sense. While some things are a little bit instinctual, like, for example, sexual needs, if these needs are being deprived, like the need for sex and romance, the individual may no longer find any value in their life. And so they will be suicidal, perhaps. And they might even become murderous. Now, why would they become murderous? They become murderous having homicidal thoughts because they are jealous, they are envious of other people who are fulfilling those needs, while theirs are being deprived, and they believe it's unfair. And they are frustrated because there isn't a straightforward solution to these problems. Okay, and that's a very, very important part. Okay, now when it comes to the lower order needs like physiological, food, water, or safety needs, the solution to these problems is more tangible. Okay, if you're hungry, you need food. If you're thirsty, you need water. These are tangible things, and they can largely be resolved with money. That's also another important thing. You can resolve these issues with money. But the higher order needs aren't quite so straightforward to resolve if the individual is being deprived of them. Because the old saying is true. You can't buy love. You can't buy friendship. But these are things that people need, right? They need them. Otherwise, life is no longer valuable. It's no longer worth living. I once encountered someone who bristled at the prospect of needing sex and love and friends and things like that. This person was very, very bizarre. And she said, "You don't need sex in order to live." And I said, "Yes, that's correct. You don't need sex in order to live. However, you also don't need to live." Okay? That's the curse, so to speak, of intelligence. Intelligence is both a blessing and a curse. It's a blessing because we can then build lots of technology, right? We have everything in modern society because we are intelligent. But it's also a curse because then you can contemplate the meaning, the purpose, and the value of your own life. And if it's no longer meaningful or purposeful or valuable, deranged behavior is inevitably going to result. Okay? So they are angry and jealous of other people. Now, it needs to be said. I said this before and it needs to be said again. Most incels do not hurt anyone. Okay? If they end up hurting anyone, it would most likely just be themselves. Okay? So an incel might just commit suicide, which is still a tragedy. Okay? But it becomes an even bigger tragedy if they start murdering other people. Okay. Now this is one of the biggest differences between incels and terrorists that I mentioned before, and of course psychopaths, because psychopaths are not suicidal, not inherently at least. They do value life. Okay. The reason why they commit their crimes is actually because they get pleasure from committing the crimes. They just don't care that they're hurting other people because they have low or non-existent empathy. See, that's one of the biggest differences. Okay, they still value life though. They still want to live. They want to keep living so they can keep on hurting other people, and that's why they're serial killers because they commit the crime, they get whatever kind of sick gratification they get out of it, could be sexual, and then they go back to doing all of the stuff that they were doing, keeping their little secret life a secret from all the people who think that they're normal. And then they do it again, right? They want to keep on living so they can keep on doing it over and over again. Incels, they don't really get any pleasure from killing people. Not really. None at all, I would say. But serial killers do. And they also have a diminished sense of fear, which is why they would commit these things. So let's take a look at our bullet points here. So incels' higher order needs are unfulfilled. And then this results in an aberration in how they're thinking and their own behavior. And while incels can go through a depression, most of them don't actually hurt anyone. Okay? It's only when they start murdering people are kind of like the arguments that I'm making here applicable. But most incels don't actually hurt anyone. However, the ones that do are cowards. Now, why do some of these shooters target kids, right? You had Sandy Hook, and people wondered why. Why would anyone want to hurt kids? Okay. So they're killing people because they're angry and they're jealous because their higher order needs are not being fulfilled. But they don't know how to fix it. So they're frustrated, but they're also angry. But their anger can't be directed at any one specific person because no one specifically is actually the culprit for their suffering. It's just a general anger and jealousy. So it doesn't really matter who they're killing. They just want to release their anger and attain self-actualization, which I'll get to in a second. So the reason why they target kids is because kids can't defend themselves. Okay? That's the reason. Let me show you what happens to a dumb spree shooter when they do something stupid and try to kill someone who kill people who can defend themselves. They end up looking like this guy. You remember this guy? This is the moron, the piece of shit who was a homophobe as well as being an incel. Remember, motives can overlap as well. And so he went to a gay club to kill a bunch of gay guys because he's a homophobe and his father abused him, probably because he was gay himself. And he murdered at least 5 people, I believe. But he made the mistake of fucking with the wrong people. And they managed to get a hold of him, restrain him, and then beat the ever-loving shit out of him. If you saw videos of this dude in court, he's not looking too good. He can't even sit up straight. They beat the hell out of this guy. They beat him so bad he wished that he never got out of bed that morning. That's how bad they beat the fuck out of him. So I guess he didn't get the memo. This guy's not too bright. Now, not all spree shooters are stupid, but occasionally you do get some exceptionally stupid spree shooters. But the ones that are a little bit smarter target people that cannot fight back. Spree shooters are cowards. And one of the things that they are most afraid of is pain. This guy got a big dose of pain, as you can see. But the reason why that guy, I believe his name was Adam Lanza, shot all those kids at Sandy Hook was because he was a coward. He was angry because his higher order needs were not being fulfilled, and he didn't know what to do about it. But he was also a coward, and he was afraid of dying painfully. So he knew that if he killed kids, they would not beat the shit out of him, even though he's a wimp. So that's why he did it. He wanted retribution, but against who? It can't really be directed. And he just chose an easy target. And that was it. Nothing more complex than that. Another example, Dylann Roof. Now, if you explore and research this guy, so Dylann Roof, to remind you guys, he's the one who killed a bunch of black people at a black church because he was a racist that was galvanized by racist white supremacist ideology, namely a website, I think it was called the Daily Stormer, who, I mean, this guy was this very stupid guy, like a lot of these spree shooters are. And he believed that black people were murdering white people at prodigious rates. He believed that black people were murderers. And it was on him to kill black people in order to save the white race, or some shit like that. So his brilliant fucking idea was to kill a bunch of pacifist black people at a black church, because apparently these are the black people who are going around raping and murdering white people. No. No. As stupid as Dylan Roof is, and unfortunately this motherfucker is still alive, he is not so stupid as to think that a bunch of pacifist black people in a black church were going around raping and murdering white people. That's not why he killed them. If he was really like, if he really believed in his warped ideology, why didn't he go to the inner city and track down a bunch of gang members and try to kill them? Because he's a coward. He was too cowardly to target anyone who had even the smallest possibility of fighting back. Because he didn't want to end up like this guy. As stupid as he is, he wasn't that stupid. So he deliberately targeted black people that he knew would not be able to beat the shit out of him. A bunch of pacifist black people at a black church, who he also knew would accept him to participate in a Bible study that we're having. Yeah, he went to a black church to kill a bunch of black people who were having a Bible study. And he went in there and he sat down with them and he listened to them having their Bible study for at least 45 minutes before he started shooting and killing them. That is the definition of cowardice. Incel spree shooters are cowards. They target people who can't defend themselves. So, going back to Maslow's hierarchy of needs. The reason why incels commit mass murder is to attain self-actualization. So in this context, what this means is that since they can't fulfill their needs for sex, love, romance, and all the rest, they are trying to bypass that and go directly to self-actualization. Because they know that if they commit mass murder, they are going to appear on news headlines and lots of people are going to be talking about them. They're going to have a Wikipedia article about them. And who knows, they might even appear on the covers of Time and People magazine. You remember that? I did not actually prepare this, but let's bring this up real quick. Time magazine, Columbine killers. Let's see if I can find this thing. Images. You see this shit? Yep. You see that? They turn them into celebrities. This is what happened when in the 90s. When these two losers went around and started killing a whole bunch of people. They turned them into celebrities. So that is what allowed them to just bypass all of their other needs that they weren't fulfilling and attain self-actualization. These worthless pieces of shit are now immortalized because of the media, and that's a big problem. So hopefully now you understand a little bit more about why spree shooters go around killing people. There was so much bad information out there and I couldn't take it anymore. I had to finally make a video to explain why, since no one else was doing it, and apparently the expert that you saw, was getting all the facts wrong. So I guess I got to do it. I might make one more video about this, discussing what the solutions could be on how to at least mitigate spree shootings. So we'll leave that for the next video. See you later, guys.